Brooklyn Nets, we know that they traded Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant midseason, Kyrie to the Dallas Mavericks and KD to the Suns. Given how the Mavericks season went with Kyrie and how the Suns season is currently going with Kevin Durant, do you think it probably was just better if Kyrie and KD stuck it out in Brooklyn? Because I look at this Eastern Conference. I look at how wide open it is, the inconsistencies of the Celtics, the injuries on the Sixers, the Bucks being eliminated in the first round. I don't know, man. I feel like if the Nets had Kyrie and KD with Claxton and their group of role players, this was a team that maybe not the favorites to make it out the East, but they would have had a legit chance to make it out the East.
I mean, there definitely would have been conversation for them to be the favorites to make it out of the East. Of course, the injuries to Kevin Durant at the time, where that's ultimately what ended up driving everyone away from each other in terms of Kyrie having enough with the front office, wanting out, just not being able to play winning basketball for a while. Of course, that ultimately ended up being the downfall. But they had their most historic 25-game stretch in their franchise's history. They were one of the best teams in the association when you had Kevin Durant and Kyrie on the court with these guys. I think that it's not crazy by any means to say that they would have been one of the favorites, no doubt about it, with the way that they were playing. And, of course, now that we live in hindsight and it's so crystal clear, 2020, you see that Kyrie Irving goes to Dallas. They didn't even make the playoffs. That's a shock in and of itself. You have the Suns, who traded essentially their entire bench and all their depth to acquire Kevin Durant, which you do. It's Kevin Durant, one of the best players in the game, of course. But now, in hindsight, again, you look at this team, it lacks depth. They have really nobody to turn to outside of Kevin and Devin Booker. And now you look at the Nets, and where I was very critical of how, hey, you're the team now responsible for trading James Harden, Kyrie Irving, and Kevin Durant. I sit back and I look and I think, if I'm the Nets, I'm pleased as long as neither of these two teams win an NBA Finals, because that was our goal. And if we were responsible for trading these guys and they were ultimately able to accomplish that mission of winning a championship, then I look at the Nets and say, hey, we made a mistake. We failed. But if neither of these two teams go on to win a championship, which I don't believe the Phoenix Suns will win an NBA championship, I don't think they'll make it past the Denver Nuggets. I look at Dallas. Is Kyrie Irving going to even be a Dallas Maverick next season? There's a lot of rumors saying that he will. I'm not sure until I see it actually happen. So I'm sure if you're Kevin and you're Kyrie, it's bittersweet. But I don't think that Kyrie ultimately would have made it work over in New York. The media, he just clearly was not a fan of it. He thought that that's what he wanted. Seemingly, that's not what it was. And Kevin, once Kyrie was out, Kevin Durant was going to get out of there also. But I'm with you. If I'm Kevin and Kyrie, I think, hey, our best chance to win a championship at the minimum, go to the NBA Finals, would have been if we stuck it out in Brooklyn.
Yeah, I agree. I think, you look at the landscape of the East, the Bucks are out. Boston's a bit struggling right now. Philly's banged up. The Nets definitely had an opportunity that they could have. You could have put them as a favorite. They were a great elite defensive unit.
No doubt.
At the time, Kyrie and Kevin Durant was clicking. You had Clax. You had them boys really hooping. Cam Thomas had his resurgence a little bit. He was dropping balls.
Joe Harrison.
They were clicking. And Vaughn was a elevation. He elevated them so well. This team definitely had an opportunity. I think we talked about it when they got traded. We was kind of upset because this kind of takes a team away from the East, and it would have been a bloodbath if the Nets stayed healthy. I do think though, the Nets are cool with it. I think with the Suns possibly, they're not gonna be that great all the time. That's still another draft pick. The Nets can build. They can probably bring in another star. I think the Nets are okay with the decision they've made. I think they got back good returns. Dinwiddie's not a long-term option. Finney-Smith he's not expensive, so that's something good. Claxton, they want to keep Claxton. The Kyrie thing is interesting because they made this new rule. So I don't know if he's going to be able to go to L.A. I don't know if they're going to have the money to even get him to L.A. So the best bet is to stay with the Dallas Mavericks. You can go to Detroit, you go to San Antonio, you go to Charlotte. I mean, now you got to wait. But I think with Dallas, you still got Luka. You got possibly a top 10 pick. You still got them guys out there. There's definitely a situation where you could look at maybe if we make a few moves here and there, we can get back into the playoffs. And I think that's the best situation for Kyrie. But ultimately, I think the Nets are fine with where they're at. They have Mikal Bridges, who is an emerging star, somebody who can come in. He can definitely be your number 2, your number 3. They just got to find that number 1. If they can find that number 1, I think they're pretty much back into the race.
They did get an absolute haul for KD because right now in Phoenix, he's not playing at the level of a guy getting traded for 4 first-round picks. And Mikal, who in 2 or 3 years will Mikal Bridges be better than KD? I would say no, but if KD is going to be hurt every single season,
and
I almost shit myself.
And Mikal's playing 75 games a year, KD's playing 40, you're like, I'd rather have Mikal. But here's the thing. While you guys were talking, no, I'd rather have a guy play 75 games.
You would rather have Julius Randle over
you're
KD?
A big Kevon Looney guy, right?
You would rather have Julius Randle over KD? He played 70 games. You're thinking about it.
Julius Randle or Kawhi?
You're absolutely thinking about it. But the game's played. Does it matter in that situation?
Well, Kawhi coming off his torn ACL
Randle played,
still
I think,
finished with
81, or he played all
played a lot of games. KD had 50, 40 from everywhere.
Listen, I think we
more
could just
versatile player than a Julius Randle.
I think we can just praise Mikal Bridges.
Yeah, exactly.
Without trying to.
That's where I was
say,
going.
He is also saying 2 to 3 years.
I don't think
And
the
lock it
Suns.
down.
I don't agree with either. But hey, he's saying down the line.
I don't
KD
think the
37.
Suns. I don't
The
think
KD
the
name
Suns
drop is
gonna
crazy.
Insane. But
Well,
that's
they got
that was the
traded
main
for
piece.
one another. That's what we got to look at here. But here's what I always take away. One thing I've learned is that patience is a virtue. And as an NBA fan, I want things to happen quickly. My first full finals I watched was Dirk Nowitzki in his age 32 season. It took Dirk Nowitzki 11 years to get back to the finals for a second time. And the 10 years before that, it was different eliminations in the first round, getting eliminated by an 8th seed in the Golden State Warriors who were clicking at the right time, losing the finals to the Heat. It takes teams a very long time to get it to click. And this was the best year of that Nets core. It was you could, it's kind of crazy to say this, the least chaotic year in spite of them firing head coach Steve Nash. And they won 18 of 20 games at one point. That was a contender. But ultimately, Kyrie wore out his welcome. The fan base was done, and the front office was not going to pay him. He wanted to get paid like anyone would want to. So I do think in hindsight, from a basketball perspective, did they make the wrong decision? Yes. But I can't tell you it's going to make you happy. And that's what it comes down to at the end of the day. For Kyrie and KD, they want to go to different settings, places that they at least know the co-star they'll be alongside. Whereas in Brooklyn, there was no control. KD wanted to play with Kai, but that wasn't going to be in the cards for him given where the management and, more importantly, ownership currently was at that point. So it's always a dynamic question.
I just wonder what went behind the scenes because Kyrie leaves Brooklyn, and all Kyrie has to say is negative things about Brooklyn. Kevin Durant leaves Brooklyn, and he says they were a world-class organization. They treated me with the utmost respect. Mikal Bridges goes there. He loves it. He's loving how they're treating him right now. This just seems like a Kyrie Irving problem, man. Like, I'm sorry to say that. It just does. Because Kevin Durant didn't have a problem with the Nets at all. Kevin Durant wanted to play in Brooklyn. He didn't want to leave. The only reason he left is because he saw the Nets team and said, we cannot compete with this team, and I want to compete. And guess what the Nets did? We'll trade you to where you want to go. The Nets treated him with the utmost respect. And Kyrie Irving, people always talk about the stipulation. Oh, but the Nets gave Kyrie a stipulation of you had to make the finals in order to get an extension, right? Well, that doesn't have any effect, right? Because Kyrie Irving was already getting his guaranteed money for this season. The Mavericks didn't give Kyrie any stipulation on whether or not he's going to be back next year. That's an unknown. Whether a team gives you an extension is always an unknown. So even if there's a stipulation in there, it's just a word of mouth stipulation of like, yeah, wishy-washy type of thing. But if I guarantee if the Nets had a phenomenal playoff run, they didn't win the championship, but Kyrie played exceptional, he would have got that extension because he played well. Yeah, sure. So I don't believe in that stipulation talk because ultimately the goal for the team is to win a championship. That's what it is all along. And Kyrie Irving requesting a trade out of nowhere, after KD had gotten injured, they were on a 13-game win streak. I'm looking at this Nets roster, Kyrie, Royce O'Neal, Harris, Durant with Claxton, off the bench, T.J. Warren, Seth Curry, and Utah. Yuta Watanabe. I do believe Cameron Thomas. I do believe that if Sean Marks had focus at the deadline of saying, let's improve this roster instead of trading our two main stars, they would have got somebody at the deadline to improve this team. This could have been a favorite in the East. But Kyrie Irving out of nowhere requested a trade. You go to Dallas, and you might not be back in Dallas. And even when it comes to the Mavericks, Luka Doncic is getting paid a lot. If you bring back Kyrie on a big-time contract, that's now 2 stars you're paying, and we're not even mentioning the Mavericks' salary that's allocated to Davis Bertans' horrible contract. Tim Hardaway's getting paid $16 to $17 million a year.
He'll probably get traded.
Reggie Bullock's getting paid $11 million a year. You're paying average guys a lot of money. So even if Kyrie Irving goes back to Dallas, the Mavericks can't get much better.
Respect Hardaway.
So are you saying what I've said? That Kyrie Irving is a that the Mavericks should not extend Kyrie?
I don't think the Mavericks should extend Kyrie. The reason why is because if you do, you now run the risk of being an inflexible roster with your salary cap and your second star missing half of the games. It's astonishing to me how everybody loves to have Kyrie play the victim and, how can the Nets do this to Kyrie? How can they give him a stipulation when Kyrie has missed over 50% of the games?
And he's also torpedoed multiple teams now. And most importantly, he drove 2 stars out of town. He drove James Harden out of town and then Kevin Durant. I love Kyrie the player, but when you're building a team and you're paying him $150 to $200 million guaranteed, a max deal, you want to know he's going to be on the court for you, not only in the regular season to get you to a top 4 or 5 seed the way he did in Cleveland, but you also want him to be you also want him to be available for you in the playoffs. And if he's going to be injured the way he was in 2021, I think for the Mavericks, it's not a no-brainer you extend Kyrie, because if you do, there's now the biggest concern of them all. It's that you might drive Luka Doncic out of town.
No, I don't think that would be the case. I think it should be understood at least. Kyrie Irving, when he's on the basketball court, is still one of the best basketball players in the world. I don't think that it'll be him trying to drive Luka out. If anything is driving Luka out, it's the front office because of the lack of depth and help that they've put around him.
But that will happen if they pay Kyrie Irving.
Yes and no, but listen, what you're saying about the Bertans, I think Tim Hardaway will be traded. I think that's a contract that'll be off. They'll probably get another player. They need help in multiple ways than one, but I think that you need to try your hardest to ensure, hey, Luka, we're trying. You have Kevin Durant. You have Kyrie Irving. You and Kyrie can make something happen where it didn't happen down the stretch last season, where they obviously were playing such bad basketball that they didn't make the playoffs. It's still, all right, let's not sign Kyrie Irving, but let's say, two solid role players that still they're not going to move the needle the same way that the attention will be on Kyrie Irving. And now this opens up the basketball court for also a Luka Doncic. I don't think Kyrie will be a reason why Luka will be out of town. That's not the case. I don't think that now Kyrie's going into another organization. He's going to try and make himself a target in any way or shape or form. It's been evident, or at least the way that I saw things break out in Dallas, that his focus was basketball. He played at a very high level, although it didn't translate to wins. I think that the idea that Kyrie Irving will try and draw Luka, that's not one that I'm thinking of. Luka will leave Dallas because Dallas has failed to provide talent around Luka to succeed.
Yeah, I don't think that Luka's looking at Kyrie the person and saying, I got to be out of here because of him. But ultimately, the inability to be available will be annoying to him, and that will cause them to lose games. He's
been available. All right, let me phrase this clearly. He has not been unavailable due to injury for a majority. So if he's healthy, he's playing. He played a majority of the games last year. The only reason why he missed time last year was because, of course, the anti-Semitism issues.
That's a part of it, though.
Fair, which you can't excuse, but you also can't ignore. But at the same time, he's shown to be available when he can. He missed a good portion of the year after COVID season because of the vaccine issues. In the end, it ended up being that almost every single team didn't have an issue with this because of their city laws or state laws, and that Kyrie was just one of those that was put in a position where he could not play basketball in his home court because of vaccine
it makes sense,
rules
though,
and regulations.
Because New York is one of the most populated states in the country.
No doubt.
Well, Brad Bill was able to play.
That's what I'm saying.
Washington is not as populated as New York.
But there were so many other teams
I'm saying Brad Bill was able to play. Brad Bill was able to play in New York.
And the only reason why this ban got lifted was because the players on the New York Mets and the New York Yankees were not vaccinated, so they wouldn't have had a lot of star players play baseball. So that's ultimately why they ended up lifting it. And really, if you take a look at it. So, listen, yes, there's reasons to be upset at Kyrie Irving. I just can't look at Kyrie Irving, the basketball player, and say that, no, I don't want this guy on my team because he's obviously an issue on the court. That's not it. No one's saying that. It's the off the field, the off the court, which becomes an issue. But really, when he's available and able to play, he does and does at a high level.
You're making great points. So I do agree with most of your points. The COVID thing, I do agree, was an anomaly. Doesn't happen in most seasons, in any season, honestly.
Yeah, for real.
But the injury thing is a concern. Right. You're talking about a 30-year-old injury-prone star.
Has he been injury-prone recently?
He
Throughout
has.
his career, historically, he's dealt with a lot
It was
of
the
ankle
first year
injuries.
in
Got hurt in the playoffs in
that's fair.
2021.
That's
First year in
facts
the-
that I forgot. That
Yeah.
I forget, and you shouldn't forget that because
Yeah.
that was one of the reasons
First
why they
year
lost.
in Brooklyn in the regular season, second year in the playoffs, third year COVID, and I think he was dealing with an injury late in the year.
Yeah, the first year he played like 10. No, he played 20 games and then he was out for the year.
The first year I know he was hurt for sure,
The
and
next
then he
year
got
got hurt in
hurt.
the playoffs.
But that was a freak thing that that Giannis
Yeah,
put
no,
his
I
foot
understand.
there, and then he ended up rolling his ankle. And then the year after, yes, that was was
COVID?
the COVID year, but he still ended up coming back playing at a very high level. They just got swept.
It's just I don't know how many teams.
He was bad in the playoffs. Yes,
I don't know how many teams. Actually, I think Dallas might be the only team out of desperation that would give Kyrie 40 to 50 million for 2 to 3 years.
I'd agree.
He won.
who?
Kyrie.
Why did he win?
If he get that back, he
Oh,
won.
No, I think he will get paid.
Yeah.
Like given how the Lakers have looked
look at what
this
he
year,
did this year, bro.
given how the Lakers have looked this year with not a third star, would the Lakers pay Kyrie
I
45
don't need it.
million?
Apparently, we're out of the running to bring Kyrie
Yeah, I
to
don't
our
need it.
squad. I don't think
Role
we'll bring
players,
him,
LeBron and AD.
Yep.
Move.
Hey, that's why that's my gripe. I don't know how many teams are going to pay for Kyrie's services, multiple years.
So what's the better alternative to not retaining Kyrie for the Dallas Mavericks?
Well, a little preview. I don't know. If a better alternative for me is not bring back Kyrie, I'd sign role players like Josh Hart. I'd even bring in Austin Reeves to Dallas. I mean, he would be a good player next to
Not
Luka.
leaving.
Austin Reeves, Josh Hart. You sign these role player guys like Bruce Brown, those type of players.
First
And
round, be good.
I think you trust the development of Jaden Hardy and Josh Green and the 10th overall pick you're going to draft.
I think that there is a possibility that first round pick and Tim Hardaway gets traded and they try to upgrade.
Oh, you said trade the 10th pick?
No, I
Keep it?
keep it. And
Putting
draft
him
it.
I'm
next to-
saying that.
Putting him next to Luka is tough. Unless he's a big.
I think Jaden Hardy can play next to Luka just fine, and I think Jaden Hardy will eventually develop into a really good player.